linking economic master plan to spatial, physical framework, and saying there has to be a link. You can't run them separately, as lots of organisations, be they national or regional or local, tend to do. Lawrence was often talking about changing lifestyle and anticipation, and some of the examples he gave were places trying to be quite progressive in thinking about how technology and lifestyles and work styles were changing and how we might anticipate and provide for those in some kind of win-win basis. And some of what Petra was saying at the end was implying that planning and the way we think of planning may be too narrow, that we're thinking about things like in statutory planning it tends to be land use and development, the new development, not the existing communities that she talked about. It's the new physical infrastructure and forms, and really the other issues around health and well-being and sense of community aspiration and sense of well-being. We're being missed out of some of those traditional forms, and that things like charrettes may offer a new opportunity. So you've got a range of things, in addition to where Hussam kicked us off right at the beginning, in thinking about how do we link planning and master planning and frameworks to delivery, because we can, right at the beginning, have a pile of plans, be swamped in them, but nothing gets done, nothing gets delivered. So I think that starting point is also a key valid part of our discussion. So, can you, hands up, if you've got a question or a comment, and let us know who you are, and if you've got it directed to a particular person that you're listening.
Hi, good afternoon. Michael Johnson, my name is. I'm probably referred to as a local property developer who has developed in Buenos Aires, South Africa, Spain, and certainly Scotland. I brought to Carnoustie the Open Championship by building a hotel and negotiating the Open Championship coming back. I really felt very sorry for Bertha, because when she goes to Singapore and all of these vertical developments, I don't think she'll be able to get around the coast with a butter, because she was never mind using a driver. We have to really look at sustainability of a wonderful symposium we put together today from Sandra. It's given a really broad brush look at exactly where we are in different cities and different geographics and different economies. Yeah? We cannot be led at any time by the municipality. By the municipality. We cannot be led by them. If we take Stuart Gulliver, I'm sorry that he's not here, and I'm not making any criticism unless it's constructively suggested. But we can look at Anderson Quay in Glasgow, where multi-million pounds have just been spent on the walkways. There is no takers, it's vacant, it's secure, it's druggies. We really have to get into the heart of the people becoming part of the community. The sustainability of the development is the quality of the strength of the community economically. The fact that in the urban development, they must be able to walk to school, to walk to the shop, to walk to the beach. And we must use these development areas to capitalise on the people using their own steam, their own body, and their own health. And they've got to socially integrate with the local retailer. We have lost to the supermarket the skills, the wonderful skills of the pâtissier and in Paris. We've lost the butcher, and we take an area in the east side of the east such as Roy Ferry. It's been rejuvenated, but it needs support for the interface trusts, the support of the, as I say, the retailer, the vendor, to build upon the community spirit. The environment of the community spirit depends on social integration. Whether they go to the pub, say hello, etc., etc. As a boy, you know, I was brought up in the city, not far from me. And I knew all the neighbours. In many cases, they knew me because I was a wild guy. Yeah? But at the end of the day, there was a great care. My mother, who was an Irish woman, she made food for a guy across the road who lost his leg in the war. We don't see any of this anymore. And this community spirit must be really integrated in the plan. Yeah? I just want to finish here and just say, I done the largest development of urban regeneration in Dundee, which was carried out in Campertown Works with 7,000 people who were employed in it. When I walked the stairs to Thompson, sheltered themselves and saw the thread of the workers who laboriously walked up and down these stairs, the understanding of exactly what social integration is. We need facilities management. We need the property to be managed. I went and spent, I have a place down in Buenos Aires, and I went into Orlando and bought a place in Celebration for business to understand the condominium living. And we need that condo-style living where people attend meetings, socially integrate, they've got a part to play, and they've got management of the property. I'd just like to say thank you very much for a wonderful presentation.
Okay, so it's social interaction, almost custodianship and curation of that management. Do you want to pick up? I'm going to find out where our next one's coming from. Do one of you want to respond to that, Tom?
It's music to my ears. I have to try out at the golf course in Singapore. But what I also would say is the kind of place that we're creating. I mean, Malcolm Fraser isn't here today, but in Edinburgh we have a type of housing called colony houses, which creates the kind of community spirit, a kind of neighbourhood, kind of interaction that we so desperately need. Especially, as I mentioned earlier, the statistics about an aging population is quite strong. It doesn't mean to imply that every aging person is ill or needs care, but it does imply that it needs to have interaction. And so the whole aspect of interaction in the new places that we're creating, very, very important social interaction.
I think all the points that you raise are spot on. I think the big challenge we have is understanding the way in which design reasoning fits with these points. I think what Hussam and I have been corresponding about is the conclusion I came to after our Utrecht Learning Cities platform that Kevin mentioned earlier is that we can't do without design reasoning in order to make good quality master plans, but they have to include a capacity to evolve intelligently. What I was trying to point to was that there was a minimal capacity to evolve intelligently in the case of the Singaporean project, and a fairly substantial capacity to evolve intelligently in the case of Hopping City. Both of them are based on an idea that we should have integrated neighborhoods, but they achieve it in different ways, and they achieve it by trying to look forward to a future collaborative community that might come to emerge because of contemporary processes. Now, how do you envision those? And how do you begin to allow stakeholders to speak to that process as they come into contact with the planning process itself? The question is, can the municipality lead? I think the answer is sometimes yes, sometimes no. In the case of Silicon Valley, in fact, the municipality could not lead. In the case of Bilbao, I think it's questionable whether the municipality was leading or whether, in fact, it was a broader set of actors that included the civic economy as well. So I think these are open questions. What, for me, matters is understanding how the design process has to cultivate these patterns of collaboration and trust building you described.
My name is Charles Green. I'm a consultant now, but I've led many local authorities in the past and worked with the private sector. I'd like to link Stuart's talk, which I thought was very good, but also with Lawrence's, and it's around the economic drivers. It strikes me when you're talking about Singapore and places like that, you have very strong economic drivers which are using to drive your master plan and make these things happen. But in a lot of the communities in this country, we have a much weaker economy, and we're constantly looking for what are those economic drivers that we can actually use to effect change and make things happen. And so I'm interested very much in your views about, in that sort of weaker position, Stuart talked about some of the northern English cities, Newcastle, places like that. How you drive that forward when you're struggling really, really hard to make things happen. I have my own views on it, which actually is a flexible master plan can actually help that process as well by having a clear vision, but not a vision which actually constrains what you're trying to do, but gives the private sector opportunities to go forward. But I'd be very much interested in your views of how you work in a less strong economy.
I just spent 2 days earlier this week with the Nordic City Network, where they have a very similar set of problems. That is, the question is, how do you reorganize without strong growth? Because let's say what we all take for granted is that there are drivers of change. It's just that here we're working with minimal growth and minimal resources. But if we want to remain competitive or put ourselves in position to participate within regional networks to remain economically viable and strong, then we have to ask what is blocking our potential. And that usually leads us to discover some kinds of blockages that will lead us to want to reorganize urban fabric and economic processes. Now, I think my point of view about this is that many of the principles remain the same. That is, we need to think about integration and collaborative practices as being at the foundation of the planning process. We need to think in terms of effective urban areas rather than parcel by parcel kinds of development. We need to seek mix and integration. But as I think pointed out in the piece from Utrecht, mix, connectivity, they are not themselves goals of a plan. The goals and objectives of a plan, I think, have to, as Petra's been pointing out, have to emerge from within an existing stakeholder base. Now, if you're also trying to figure out how you link up to others, I think the question is not so terribly different, whether you're Singapore or Hoffman City or here. The reason why I say that is that Singapore is 4 million people. So is Copenhagen and Malmö, as in the Øresund region. Malmö has to act. It's in a way, it's itself a tiny city. It has to find ways to act, to develop new fabric, new potentials with its university. They have to ask how the university can help bring about the possibility of jobs, and ask whether a plan can contribute to that in some way. Well, if you ask that question, you have to propose an idea about a new kind of urban neighborhood and see who might take up the idea and want to participate in a charrette and want to be active and involved in it. So I think that the principles are the same. We just have to work harder in places where we don't have this kind of growth.
If I may just say one thing, just in reference to a low economy, especially in relation to Scotland, one thing as well, Stuart mentioned, issue of sequencing and stages in master planning. And I think that the waterfront is the perfect example as to what's going on in terms of it will take time and also working in stages. But what is important is the connections and the relationship between those stages. Because what worried me, if you give it phase 1 to a developer A, and suddenly you give stage 2 to developer B without the proper connections and understanding the interrelation between both of them. I think sequencing is a key word for places like Scotland, but we really need to make sure the connections is robust and the outcomes are related to each other. Plus, what is important when we refer to sequencing as well in bringing issue of change, because we are aware that you might go with phase 1 and suddenly in 5 or 6 years you might have to go in different stages or in different connections. Can we bring changes? And I think the local authority in this case maybe have a role in terms of control and management.
I don't really want to answer the question directly. I want to sidestep it, because there's another big economy out there that's emerging in Scotland, not just the sector economy, social enterprise. Actually, we're incredibly enterprising in Scotland. So don't just look at the traditional model, don't just look at the economy as you have done so far. That's what I mean to say. Master planning has to adapt. It wants to survive, it has to adapt to a very changing environment. Driven by some of the policy drivers, driven by our politicians, but also driven by the bottom-up community taking their own interest in their own hands and creating the kind of social enterprises that are good for the economy. So don't underestimate.
Thanks very much, Peter. Thanks to all our speakers and presenters, including Stuart, and thanks for all the questions. We're doing well, we're on time, and I'm going to try and keep us on time.